Renowned American political analyst Scott Ritter recently published a comprehensive study on the connections between Latvian politicians and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Here are some of the most intriguing excerpts from this research. But before we begin, please subscribe to our channel to avoid missing new videos. There are numerous accounts of President Vladimir Putin's ties with Latvia, some quite credible and others dubious. Latvia's permanent representative to NATO and former ambassador to Moscow, Maris Rīkstens, hinted that Latvia feels slighted by the fact that the Russian president has never visited. From a foreign policy perspective, Latvia has shown a clear willingness for respectful relations with Russia in the past, but Russia has not reciprocated, Rīkstens once stated on Latvian television. He noted that in 30 years, no Russian president has visited Latvia on an official visit, even though many global political figures have come to Riga. It is known that in his youth, judoka Putin participated in a championship in Riga, but journalists could not uncover any details. On September 28, 2009, during a conversation in Moscow, Putin shared childhood memories related to Latvia with former Prime Minister Egars Kalvaitis. The newspaper Neatkarīga Rīta Avējs reported that Putin told Kalvaitis about spending a month in rural Latvia, where he recuperated after an injury and regained his athletic form. Putin drank fresh milk, breathed Latvian air, and, to the surprise of Russian doctors, recovered very quickly, the newspaper reported. This meeting at a business lunch during the investment forum Russia Calling caused a significant stir among Latvian politicians. Kalvaitis was accused of selling out Latvia for food. The last meeting between Putin and a Latvian official was on February 6, 2014, during the Olympics. His counterpart was then President of Latvia, Andris Bērziņš. Regarding Putin's unfulfilled visit to Latvia, the occasion for the invitation was the 74th birthday of French President Jacques Chirac, celebrated in Riga after the NATO summit. News agencies quickly reported the possible visit of the Russian president, but it did not happen. Officially, it was reported that the visit could not be arranged. Some public figures suggested that Vīra Freiberga did not want Putin to overshadow her on her triumphant day. The Russian president did not notice that a NATO summit was taking place in Riga, Freiberga remarked. Dear viewers and listeners, do you think Vīra Freiberga refused to coordinate Putin's visit out of fear of losing public attention? Please share your opinion in the comments. Let us continue. Former head of protocol for the Russian Prime Minister, Marina Yentaltseva, recalled that, to her knowledge, a high-ranking official's visit was cancelled only once due to unacceptable conditions from the host country. The host country proposed a negotiation venue that was politically unacceptable, in close proximity to the Museum of the Occupation of Latvia. Of course, this was unacceptable, Yentaltseva explained. The then Russian ambassador Viktor Kaluzny stated that until the end of Vīra Freiberga's presidential term in 2007, Putin would not visit Latvia. He did not come in 2008 for the Baltic Sea Prime Ministers Forum, where he was expected. This became the main event of that forum. At the end of 2010, Russia's ambassador to Latvia, Alexander Veshniakov, mentioned on Baltcom Radio that in 2011, Russia's President Dmitry Medvedev, Prime Minister Vladimir Putin, or Patriarch Kirill of Moscow and all Rus might visit Latvia. However, none of this happened. In March 2015, President Andris Bērziņš said on LTV7 that the invitation extended during Zattler's presidency was no longer relevant due to the Ukrainian crisis. How did Latvian politicians react to Putin's emergence on the political scene? With the arrival of Vladimir Putin, Russia gained a young and serious leader. The current realities in Russia allowed him to make a swift rise on the political stage, supported by the public and many media outlets, said then Latvian Foreign Minister Andris Bērziņš in an interview with Panorama Latvia on January 15, 2000. In March of the same year, when Putin was elected president of Russia, Latvian leader Vaira Vike-Freiberga welcomed the democratic elections, expressed hope for improved bilateral relations, and wished Putin strength of will. The mayor of Ventspils, Ivars Lumbergs, now former, said that Putin's election as president would change Russia's arrogant and short-sighted attitude towards Latvia. "I believe that Putin will continue his course aimed at consolidating society for authoritarian nationalism," said political scientist Artis Pabriks, future Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of Defense. At the ceremony of presenting credentials on October 3, 2017, President Putin told Ambassador Maris Rikstens that Russia is ready to develop good neighborly relations with Latvia based on mutual interests. He also expressed hope that the rights of compatriots living in Latvia would become a topic of dialogue. "Of course, Mr. Ambassador, you know our attitude towards our compatriots living in Latvia. I hope that this issue will also become one of the topics of our dialogue," said the Russian president. Currently, Rikstens is the last Latvian ambassador to Russia. He completed his mission in 2022 when diplomatic relations between the countries were downgraded at Riga's initiative. Now, the Latvian embassy in Moscow is headed by Charge d'Affaires Dace Rutka. Putin has repeatedly spoken about Russians in Latvia. "Understanding the feelings of the peoples of the Baltic countries, I nevertheless cannot agree that people who ended up there not by their own will, but by the will of fate, do not enjoy the full range of rights granted to all people on the European continent, and that they should not feel like second-class citizens," he said in an interview with German TV channels in 2000. He has frequently returned to the issue of non-citizens, twice comparing Russian residents of Latvia to Albanians in Macedonia, which greatly unsettled the Latvian leadership. In November 2001, at the Congress of Russian Compatriots, Putin noted that Russia had done unacceptably little for its compatriots, emphasizing that the main task of the state is to achieve equal rights for the Russian-speaking population and the titular nation. In October 2006, at the Congress of Compatriots in St. Petersburg, President Putin stated that Moscow would seek to resolve the problem of non-citizens in the Baltic countries. "I cannot fail to mention the mass statelessness in Latvia and Estonia, where there are about 600,000 so-called non-citizens, permanent residents of these countries. It is necessary to ensure that the authorities of these countries overcome the inertia of outdated approaches and start adhering to pan-European legal standards," said the head of state. In February 2012, Putin noted that the infringement of the rights of the Russian-speaking population in Latvia does not bring honor to the European Union as a whole. "We must in no case escalate to a level of confrontation, we need to bring our colleagues into a civilized discourse," the Russian president urged. Finally, in December 2023, Putin warned the Latvian authorities against a dismissive attitude towards Russians. "If they continue such a policy towards people who wanted to live in a particular country, worked there, and contributed to its welfare, and treat them with such disdain, they will eventually face the same attitude within their own country," said the Russian president. In 2003, Putin received a letter from Latvian schoolboy Yaroslav Karpliak. "I want to study and understand life in my native language," wrote the third grader. The Russian leader sent a reply to the boy through the Latvian ambassador. "Hello, Yaroslav. I understand your desire to study and understand life in your native language. In many countries around the world, children from large national communities have this right. For modern Europe, this is a measure of the state's democratic nature. From your letter, it is clear that you, Yaroslav, are a person who cannot tolerate injustice and is ready to stand up for yourself and your beliefs. And most importantly, you are not alone. This, I believe, is a guarantee that the Russian language, which has been spoken in Latvia for several centuries, will continue to be spoken there in the future. I wish you, Yaroslav, health and success, good and loyal friends, both in Russia and in Latvia. V. Putin, Moscow, Kremlin. July 7, 2003. Vladimir Putin also interacted with ordinary Latvian citizens via televised conversations. During the first such conversation in 2001, President Putin, responding to Sergei Anatolyevich Timofeyev from Riga, who asked, "Is Russia planning to protect the rights and interests of Russians in the Baltics not just in words but in deeds?" assured that efforts in this direction would be increased. In 2003, in response to Dobroslava Ivanovna Dyakova, a pensioner from Vyborg, he reiterated that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was paying more attention to protecting the interests of the Russian-speaking population in the Baltic countries. He pointed out that the standards being implemented in Western Europe should also apply to those living in the Baltics, including those we call the Russian-speaking population. Putin cited the situation in Macedonia as an example. In September 2005, participants in a televised conversation connected with the Russian president from the roof of the Moscow house in Riga, as the Riga City Council did not permit the event to be held in Liva Square. Putin found the actions of Riga's authorities strange. "I am sorry you had to gather on the roof," he told his Latvian interlocutors. Participants were prohibited from gathering in the square due to the visit of the Moldovan president to Riga, who was supposedly going to walk there at the time. Shortly after, a ban on the import of Moldovan wines into Russia was announced. In December 2011, during the 10th anniversary of the president's conversation with the country, filmmaker Nikita Mikhalkov read a letter from a woman who had moved to Russia from Latvia a few years earlier. "My middle son, a 19-year-old first-year student, was beaten in the metro on October 21 when he stood up for a girl who was being harassed by 5 Caucasians. No one around intervened for my son. Thank God, someone called the police. He ended up in the Sklifosovsky Institute with a head injury. A few years ago, I left Latvia, where I had an interesting job, a good apartment, and loyal friends. I moved to my homeland, Russia, so that my sons could grow up and study here. Now I deeply regret this. What is happening to Russia? I am confused and desperate about what is happening in my country." Today, Gleb says he does not want to stay in Russia, the letter said. Putin first congratulated the woman on raising such a son. He then noted that hooligans are not necessarily Caucasians, and that there are good young people among Caucasians as well, recalling the saying, "The grass is always greener on the other side." He continued, "As for Europe, well, Latvia, the woman moved from Latvia with her family. Do you think there are fewer problems with street crime there? Do you think there are no similar incidents involving those who came from North Africa? Crime there is rampant." The history of Russian-Latvian relations includes many interesting episodes, and the first meeting between Latvian President Vaira Freiberga and Russian President Vladimir Putin on February 10, 2001, in the Tyrolean Alps holds a special place. This meeting occurred unexpectedly and was seen as an important step in developing bilateral relations. According to Vike Freiberga, the negotiations took place in an atmosphere of mutual understanding and dialogue. She expressed hope for further improvement of relations and noted that the meeting with Putin was the first step on a long journey. Putin, in turn, said the meeting was very important to him and emphasized the willingness to resolve all issues through negotiations. However, years later, Vike Freiberga shared a different perspective on this meeting. In an interview with the magazine Clubs in 2014, she revealed that Putin tried to intimidate her, and when he failed, he became irritated. Vaira described him as a person who could change from soft and courteous to the exact opposite within seconds, which unsettled her. In January 2017, in an article in the Washington Post, Vike Freiberga described Putin as someone who could psychologically impact his interlocutors. She noted that he could look at you with dead fish eyes in an attempt to intimidate, only to shift to a warm and gentle gaze the next moment. Latvian journalist Lado Lapsa, who reviewed the meeting's protocols, called it a political spanking, noting that it was an hour of shame for Latvia. Apart from this meeting, there are other intriguing episodes in the history of Russian-Latvian relations. For instance, in March 2007, after a meeting with Latvian Prime Minister Kalvaitis, Putin mentioned his fondness for Riga sprats, emphasizing that they should be available in the Russian market. In May 2000, unknown individuals attempted to rename Brevibas Street in central Riga by covering the street sign with a plaque reading Putin Street. The plaque remained for about 10 hours before municipal police noticed and removed it. From Oliver Stone's documentary Putin, it became known that the Russian president's office contains a portrait of Janis Berzins, the founder of Soviet intelligence. An article in Neatkarīga Rīta Avais in 2011 mentioned that Latvian intelligence officers A. Trotmanis and R. Anspaks supported the work of a young Vladimir Putin in East Berlin. At a press conference in February 2008, while still the president of Russia, Putin drank tea from a cup bearing the emblem of the Riga porcelain factory, which also became a subject of discussion and speculation. These episodes illustrate the complex and multifaceted relationship between Russia and Latvia, where personal meetings of leaders and even minor details can carry significant weight. Dear viewers and listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments about the material we have presented. What do you think about the relationship between Putin and Latvian politicians? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like it. Thank you for watching.